What led them to be who they are? My knowledge of him made me feel that he was too good a man for me to estimate rightly, and that he was too great a philosopher to understand thoroughly. These are the words of Benzie Jones, the former secretary of Royal Society. In the scientific world, there are philosophers who constantly ask questions of nature, and discoverers, the practical men who apply the answers to various levels of human life. Very few scientists fall in both, and Faraday was one among them. Faraday, being the third child of a blacksmith who could barely support his family, passed through a poor childhood. His father had migrated from north of England to London, where he was born on 22nd September 1791. James Faraday couldn't give proper education to his son except a Sunday school under a church which Michael Faraday recalled as consisting of little more than the rudiments of reading, writing and arithmetics. Fortunately or unfortunately, he started a job in a bookbinder's shop as a newspaper boy at his 13th age. He was promoted as his master's apprentice in a year without any premium for he being too faithful. It's noteworthy that this bookshop and being a bookbinder helped him a lot. His ardor towards science started from reading Encyclopedia Britannica and Conversation on Chemistry by Jane Marcet. He even conducted simple experiments using a crude electrostatic generator which he himself made in his 14th age. This immense quest and hunger towards science and his dedication led Faraday in the right path of success throughout his life. The life-changing event of Faraday's life, as agreed by all, was attending 4 of Sir Humphrey Davy's lectures at the Royal Society of London. Through Mr. William Dancey, he found a seat in the audience and scribbled down everything he got from there. Even though he was an apprentice of Dr. La Rocha, his enthusiasm towards experiments led him to send a 300-page note on the lecture, added up with his own notes and diagrams, to Davy himself. Being a bookbinder helped him a lot for this. Davy was pleased to see his works but didn't had an opportunity to appoint Faraday as an assistant. But as destiny goes, Faraday, who later came to be known as the greatest discovery of Davy, got appointed on a vacancy created by the dismissal of the previous assistant due to his misconduct. Life of Faraday after this could be comprehended as study, seek, experiment and find. It was during the same period he became part of City Philosophica Society, which included men from lower classes of life who came together to discuss, criticize and improve in science. Their discipline was very sturdy, the remarks very plain and open, the results more valuable. Just after 7 months, he joined under Davy. He assisted him in a European trip in which he met with Ampere, Alessandro Volta and many other scholars. These relations in later life helped for easy spreading of his ideas and theories far quick, far long. His apprentice under Davy entered in 1820 and he started doing experiments and research on his own. All he had was the bucket of knowledge he was filling all these years from books, observation and practical content. Following the works of Ørsted, he invented the first model of electric motor in 1821. In the same year, he married Sarah Bernhardt. Though there was various worthy events in the next 10 years, including the production and isolation of benzene, the major milestone of Faraday happened in 1831 by the discovery of electromagnetic induction. It was an assumptive experiment that he drew from the works of Charles Wheatstone on sound and was entirely contrasting to the idea of electricity among his contemporaries. It is very interesting to note that Faraday had a central yet a very different idea about electricity from 1820s itself, that it was some kind of vibration traveling via some sort of tension or strain in the medium. He worked hardly over that theory, which eventually lasted till 1845 when he discovered diamagnetism on an attempt to find the strain he was expecting. Following the EMI, He invented electric motor and electric dynamo, which altogether aroused serious doubts about the nature and identity of electricity in the scientific world. To solve them, Faraday started to work on electrochemical decompositions. This led to the formation of very basic laws of electrochemistry, hence another milestone in 1834. By 1840, his health was failing due to continuous and fully dedicated experiments in lab while he extended his theoretical views. He gave a lecture on thoughts on ray vibration in front of a packed lecture hall. Speculations of this lecture later laid the seeds for Maxwell's electromagnetic field theory. In 1861, after 49 years of togetherness, Faraday resigned from Royal Society of London. It is surprising that he turned down the offer to be the president of the same during this period. His last years were quiet and relaxing, and in 1867 he bid adieu. There was a philosopher less on earth and a saint more in heaven. Being a boy of no proper education or orientation in his early life, his inventions, contributions, and growth to an eminent scientist seems beyond our imagination. He was not born to a wealthy, well-settled family as many of the scientists do. Neither did he have roots to scholars and philosophers, nor did he have powerful friends to guide his youth properly. Yet his immense thirst towards science and the disciplined life made his achievements possible. When he was asked about his success, he stated, "Work hard, work carefully, success will follow." That was simply Faraday. Well, he did not like to be beaten by something that he had once tried, so is his success. It's very evident that his discipline, ordered lifestyle, and more importantly his quality of person far widely shaped this man to be a scientist. And his faith in God, being a part of Centimonian Christian sector, was an important influence upon him and strongly affected the way in which he approached and integrated nature. His various letters to Mr. Abbott and others show the keenness of his observation, the abundance of his ideas, the soundness of his judgment, and that he had no forecast to his future career. His approach and kindness to the life itself leaves a book to any upcoming scholars. While concluding, the words of Lady Pollock seems good. There was a gleaming in his eyes, which no painter could copy and which no poet could describe.